Welcome to another episode of Pode Virar Referência. Today's guest is someone who has spent more than 20 years helping business grow, founders think bigger, and innovation ecosystems thrive. I met Naseem at an event hosted by Hockey Media in Los Angeles, and something she said immediately stayed with me. If you want investors in your business, start building relationship long before you actually need the money. That sentence completely changed the way I think about fundraise. And Nassim is the director of the Innovator Circle at WAM, a venture partner at Zero Limits Capital, and the Sparrow Fund advisor at Two Hour Capital, and the host of the Capital Flex, where she shares the fundraising journeys of female founders. For more than 2 decades, she has worked across venture capital, business building, innovation, digital strategy, and a lot of things to people growth. So today's guest is Nassim Sain. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
So, before all the titles, venture capital, and innovation ecosystems, who was Nassim growing up? What experiences shaped the way you see people, business, and opportunity today?
That's a good question. I am the child of immigrants. My parents emigrated to LA from Bombay. My father moved first, and then he went back, got married, and my mom came. So very classic immigrant
Oh my
story.
God, yes.
Yeah, and then myself and my two younger sisters were all born in California and raised in a very typical immigrant household, right? Education was 100% the focus. Everything else was bonus. And if you didn't get good grades, you were going to have a long conversation at dinner, right? So that was the focus. And then I realized as I got deeper into school that I grew up wanting to be a doctor, which may have been conditioning because we all wanted to be doctors, lawyers, or engineers. But I realized through high school and college that I was actually a lot better at economics and finance than I was at science and memorizing biology and the things that you need to do to get through medical school. So I ended up switching during college to being an economics major and completely shifted my focus when I got my MBA, got into management consulting, and then from there landed in venture. So it's been fun.
Yes, for sure. And your purpose, like to go through what you want, it's really great. And looking back, what were the biggest turning points that completely changed the direction of your career? Do you think it's something that someone told you, or something that you see, or just like your performance?
It was probably a little bit of everything. I do think I have always been pretty self-motivated, and so to make a decision in college to change my major was a pretty big deal because my very Indian parents were very excited that they were going to have a doctor in the family, and I had to graciously take them through the logic of why I was not going to be a doctor and why I was going to be more of a finance and economist, and I was going to go to business school and not medical school. And so that's a take some real motivation and commitment. Otherwise, I might have just stayed down the path. But I realized that the way I learn and the way I interpret and the way my brain works is much more around core problem solving and then taking those learnings and applying it to new situations. So I'm really good at those things. I'm not as good at just memorizing and repeating. And so you end up in different
Yeah.
parts of in different sectors depending on how your brain processes information. And so I luckily figured some of that out early, and I was really good at my economics classes. Like it just made sense to me. It was fun. I liked thinking about macroeconomics and currency and exchange rates and these things like fascinated me to no end. And so the more I could spend time building a career in a space that would leverage that type of insight and have fun at the same time was the combination that I wanted. And then when I started interviewing for jobs coming out of undergrad, and this was in 2001, so go back in time with me. There were lots of things. There were core business development roles, there were sales roles, there were all kinds of things on campus. And then there was consulting. And the consulting firms were on campus. And it was this amoebic thing that nobody knew enough about, but they travel and they work with clients. And so it sounded glamorous. And so I interviewed. I was like, sure, let's just see. And I ended up having the most success in those consulting interviews because they were looking for problem solvers. They were looking for critical thinking skills. They were looking for people who think out of the box to solve a client issue. And those were just things I was innately able to do. Not that I understood that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then that environment worked really well for me because you work on two or three projects at the same time. You're always in front of clients. You're building relationship skills right out of the gate. And then you're learning how to develop and manage your career very, very early. So fresh out of undergrad, having to navigate relationships inside the building as well as with clients is a skill set that I use now, right? And it taught me something so young that I don't think I would have learned in quite the same way had I done something else.
Yes, experiences of life, right? And I
Yeah.
think in the beginnings of 20s, it's a great start. And you have worked in startups, venture
hmm
capital, consulting, like you said, and digital strategy. And now you advise companies from multiple perspectives. How did these experiences prepare you for this next level?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's been the transition into venture has felt more natural
Okay.
than than I think I thought about before it happened. And so I
hmm
have spent a long time advising senior executives. I spent a long time building businesses. My core consulting life turned into running a product studio to help our clients build apps and experiences. And that product studio grew up into a venture incubator. So, and this was all early 2000s. So now this, when I graduated from business school, it was 2007, 2008, which is when we first had iPhones in our hands. So just consider how much the world has changed, right? In from 2007 to now. But a lot of companies didn't know what it meant for consumers to have an iPhone, for us to be engaging the way we were with advertising, with products, with different services such that they could actually capture data from those interactions and then tune and tweak and personalize what they send to you versus to me. These were all brand new concepts, right, in early 2000s. And I got to work in a lot of that. And so taking my core consulting skill set, which is problem solving and critical thinking and those things, and then bridging it over to what was happening in digital, and then connecting that to building products. Now I had been on all of the build side of doing the things that we do in venture. And the last piece was capital and
Mm,
writing checks, right? And so now when I work with founders, I I have a pretty good lens for what they're doing, how they're doing it, where they might see pitfalls, how people have done it before. And so I am able to team in good ways. I believe, I hope the founders I work with think so also. And then and now I can put money to work. Now I can write checks and help them grow in a way that is really fun and exciting and has a kind of impact to it that I didn't have before. And then once I got into it, like there's no going back. Like now this has to be the thing I do.
Yes, and
Because
you work with founders, executive, and investors. Do you think they actually think different, or they simply ask better questions? Like, what do you think about the mindset of them?
of the founders.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the founder. So some are, they're coming to their founder life from lots of past experience, whether corporate or not, or they've spent a lot of time thinking about the problem that they're after, and so they're asking great questions. They're thinking big and different, and the founder conversations that I like the most are the ones where they're really thinking about systems and thinking about how this offering or this subsector of the industry is going to change. If I picked it up and turned it left, how would it look different? If this macro trend continues, what happens to this part of the ecosystem? And what role does my company play in it? And those types of conversations that founders have, and when they think about it that way, that's when they're most effective at building the business that they're after.
Nice. And about the companies,
Mhm.
You've seen companies at very different steps. What do high performing organizations have in common, regardless of their size?
Yeah, they have very strong leadership. So, and
Okay.
visionary leadership, right? So, not just someone who can run the day to day, but someone
Mm-hmm.
who's really thinking about what's coming next and has that look around the corner type of perspective on how to lead the team. And so, that's a big one. An ability to lead teams is the other. So, creating vision, establishing protocols, building strong working relationships inside the building, that all makes a huge difference because you need everyone to be headed the same direction and have the same North Star and have each other's back.
It's a great skill.
And yeah, and you have to get toxicity out early. And so if you aren't really thinking about everyone on the team and unfortunately having to fire people in some cases pretty quickly, you're going to end up not as strong as you could be, right? And then the third is you really have to be onto something good, right? It has to be something that's growing, that resonates, that the market wants. And that's also takes some time. Sometimes founders have an idea that they love, but the market doesn't care. And sometimes they have an idea that just needs to go through a few pivots and they'll get there, but they have to be able to problem solve for that. And when they can do that well, the team does great.
Perfect. You need to be a good leader to have a company that it's growing and growing. And
Right.
Nassim, you seem incredibly good at connecting people, right? And where does that ability come from? Has relationship building been one of your greatest career advantages?
It's an interesting question. In the retrospect, and it has been, and I don't think I was innately good at it or that I recognized the skill set until I was in my consulting jobs. And it's because those jobs require you to get to know your clients, to spend time with other humans, to understand what they care about before you're ever going to get buy-in on whatever the thing is, right? The solution or the idea or the strategy. And so the skill set that gets built or that got built in that environment for me has paid off in spades. And I realized that I'm actually pretty good at it. I'm pretty good at meeting people, connecting dots, building relationships, getting very authentic with humans really quickly is something I learned how to do. I learned how to do over the last 25 years. And it works really well in this environment. But I did have to learn it. But I very much credit that to the years I spent in consulting.
And if someone wants to build a career like yours, what skills would you tell them to develop first? Do you think communication is the first one?
Communication is a big one. So an ability to speak clearly, understand, and really connect with people well is critical. The other one is an ability to think about the world in big ways. And what I mean by that is when something I used to do in business school that's super nerdy, but I did it all the time, was we would have the business news on, my husband and I, every morning. And I would read the Wall Street Journal every morning. And what I started to do was try to predict what the headlines might be the next week based on what was going on today. So if I'm tracking a few stories, here's what could happen next, here's what could happen next. And the first couple weeks I was terrible at it, but after a while, I actually was getting pretty good. And
Oh
I would
my
start to see
God.
headlines happen that I had thought would happen 2 weeks prior. And I remember running out of the bathroom in our apartment because I heard something. I was like, holy shit, I called that. I called that 2 weeks ago. And but you have the ability to take in market behavior and market trends and then be able to connect the dots and then future cast it out. You know, what's the implication? What's the so what? What could happen next? Uh, Really having that kind of talk track and thinking process. And it takes some work and you have to train it, but that works really well in this space because for everything that we're doing, we're having to think about what comes next. And an ability to do that and just diving into the nerdiness of being that person helps quite a bit in this space.
I never heard this advice. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And in your experience in business growth and leadership, what separates business that grow sustainably from those
Mhm.
that scale too quickly without a solid foundation?
Oh, so businesses that grow sustainably have a really good understanding of their customer. They understand what that
Okay.
customer wants, and they grow up with their customers. So it's not a matter of just doing what your customer says, but really understanding the needs and building your product so that it continues to deliver on those needs. Again, as the market is evolving, your product and service is also evolving. The companies that grow really, really fast, and then often hit either a cliff or something, is because they're not evolving quickly enough, but what they have scales really quickly, but then they don't pivot. And so you end up then stuck because now you're selling a product that somebody else can disrupt you really quickly. And if that happens, you're toast because all the money is going to move very quickly. So not having a good pulse on who else is out there, and instead of just looking down and running and looking up and around as well, is is critical to then continuing to grow sustainably.
For sure. Great. And a interesting question. When
Hmm.
you meet a founder for the very first time, what makes you think this person has something different, something special?
Oh, it's usually how they tell their story. It's usually how they tell the business story
The,
and what they're after and how they describe it. And it's a combination of simplicity and really good understanding that they can communicate clearly and some perspective on what happens when they win. And that last part might be the most important because I will ask founders, so what happened in 5 or 8 years when your company wins? What does the world look like? And some founders answer it really well, and some get stumped. And so the ones who answer it really well, you go, oh, okay, ooh, we're gonna have some fun because you've really thought about this, and we can dig in more. And so it's really having a clear handle on the problem, their solution, and how it fits in the world is are the ones that I get really excited about.
that's great actually because it's a good question. How you tell your story, right? The power of
Hmm.
storytelling. I really like this part of the communication. How founders they positioning themselves in social media or in I don't know, like in a meeting or how they
Hmm.
tell their story, right? And
Yeah.
you spend a lot of time helping companies make better decisions. And how do you personally approach decision making when there isn't a clear answer? Like you said, the vision of 5 years.
Yeah. It's you have to take in some data. You have to understand a little bit what's going on from a trend, whether it's behaviors or spend, and understanding what's moving and what's not. And then taking a look at what the company is able to do and or what it has done so far, and then it's laying out options. There's always options, right? There's not ever just one answer. There's always multiple ways to pursue it. And then it's pros and cons of each of those options. So I don't want to boil the ocean and spend too much time analyzing by any means, but we do need to be able to lay out what could be 2 or 3 potential ways of moving forward, and then assessing which one makes the most sense for the team, for the strategy, for growth, for relationships, and really thinking about that before moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. And one thing you told us in the meeting in Los Angeles
Mhm.
really stay with me. You said the founders should build relationships with investors long before they need funding.
Mhm.
And why is that so important? What is your vision about relationship?
Because when an investor is writing a check, it is 49% into the company and 51% into that human, right? You have to believe that that founder can get this done. And if I don't know the founder well enough, I can't make that assessment. And also, if I do write you a check, we're going to be friends for a long time. And so we also want to know that we can work together, that we can sit and brainstorm and draw on napkins and figure things out together, that you will feel comfortable calling me when you have a problem or shit's hitting the fan on a Sunday night and you don't know what to do. You feel comfortable that you'll call me and be very open and candid and not feel like you have to hide everything or just show a rosy picture. So building that kind of relationship early, I want to build that kind of foundation before I ever write you a check, not afterwards. And this is it's also the way men and women build relationships is also quite different. And men have been doing this for a long time. They've been in venture, the golf courses, all the stereotypes of how our men are building business and raising money are all mostly true. But because of that, when they go out to raise, it can look like it's going faster because they've already built all those relationships. They know all those people. Because the women are coming into venture somewhat recent, right? In the last maybe 15 years, we're getting much more transactional. We're getting too transactional too quickly. So I need to raise money. So now I start to make phone calls instead of having spent the time building the relationships and getting to know the humans. Because then if I call you, you're ready to get involved and look at the deck and maybe consider writing me a check because you already know me and we've established some trust and you've established some confidence and you understand my business already. All the checks I've written, I've known the teams for at least 6 months prior. For the deals that I've led, those founders came to me and said, "Hey, Naseem, can you lead this? What do you think? Would you lead this?" And so it hasn't been a sharp elbows, let me go win the deal. If those
Yeah.
founders have come and they wanted me on their team and they wanted me to lead the deal. And that's because we spent time getting to know each other.
And what do investors actually evaluate beyond revenue and pitch decks to put
Yeah.
money, right?
So diligence depends on the fund for sure, but the
Okay,
typical buckets are, it's always financial analysis, it's always market analysis, it's always competitive dynamics to see who else is there and what they're doing. It's always team. So who's on the team? What skills are they bringing? What superpowers do they have? What else are they going to need over time? And then it's the go to market and it's how is sales going to get done? How is it looking so far? Do we have traction and beacons to show that this is really going to work? And those are the major buckets of what everyone's looking at to make an assessment on whether this is the right place to put cash.
yeah, okay. Great answer. And today you also host the Capital Flags, where you
Hmm.
interview female founders. Tell us about this project that you have and how you deal with your business and your personal life too.
Yeah, yeah. So the podcast has been a lot of fun. It's the byproduct of many years of getting lots of phone calls from lots of women about really hard experiences while they were fundraising. And so I get the texts and the phone calls and the emails and the oh shit, Nassim, you won't believe what just happened. And so I have been providing a lot of feedback, guidance, coaching to founders as they go through their fundraises. And what has been happening, continues to happen, is a founder in California and a founder in New York dealing with the same thing. And I'm connecting them to say, look, she's dealt with this. You should talk to her because she'll have insight for you. But that doesn't scale very quickly, right? Like I can't continue to be the person always connecting dots. And I'm not the only one, there are others, but I wanted to scale that type of insight sharing. And the
Sure.
podcast was a way to do that. So I have great, fantastic founders. I'm friends with all of them who were willing to tell their story and talk about the crazy stuff that's happened. Like one had an investor who lowballed an investment offer. It would have been a much lower valuation than what she was actually looking for. She said no to his check. It wrapped up dinner and said, no, thanks, really appreciate it, but that number doesn't work because the valuation's not right. And he wrote an email to her board and said that she was not following her fiduciary duties and that she was a bad CEO. And you, oh my God, really? Does that shit happen? Yes, it happens. But the reason the story is important is because the her board stood by her and did not and said, you know what? We stand by our CEO. She knows what she's doing. And so all the right things happened. But the lesson out of that is pick a great board. Choose the right people for your board, right? So that you have the right people standing next to you when weird things like that happen, because they do happen.
Sure.
And so for that type of story to reach as many founders as possible, the podcast was the best way to do it.
Perfect. And do you notice any limiting beliefs that women still carry when raising capital or leading companies?
Oh God, that's a whole long conversation. So there's a few
Oh
I'll
my
call out.
God.
One, One is the estimates on how much a female founder is raising. Then I'm raising 500K. And my response is always like, just raise 1 million, right? 500K is a lovely number, but it's small. And I know you're being conservative and I know you did all the math and that's the number, but the market could change. Things could move. You need a contingency. Also, you want the raise to sound serious. Just raise 1 million. And if you close it early, but you should be saying you're raising 1 million. So we don't punch as high as we could punch all the time because we're trying to be conservative and only raise what we need. I want everyone to double whatever they're raising and just go to market with the bigger number. The second is the storytelling. So a lot of just how women think and how we move in the world is we're led by empathy. We lead with relationships. We're trying to solve like our family's problems all the time, right? Like we are the ones who take care of all the stuff. And so the storytelling will also do that. We'll be 5 pages in on a pitch, and I haven't heard the size of the market yet. I haven't heard a business model yet. I don't know how much the thing is worth. And so I will end up stopping a founder and saying, "Hey, hold on. I got it. I understand. You need to get me to the what and how much it's worth much more quickly." And so I want women to lead with money stories and not pain stories and shift the dynamic because this is a money business. And
Yeah.
if we're leading with pain, it takes too long, right?
Yes.
And then the third is a lot of what happens, what the media does, and it's pervasive. It will showcase the failures of women on the front of the New York Times and talk about it for weeks, right? But if a male founder fails, it's on the bottom of page 5, and then he gets another 300 million the next day. So we don't the media does not handle the stories of men and women the same way. And so it can
Okay.
cause more conservative approaches to how we
Mhm.
build than what we should be doing. And so the kind of the fear of failure still sits out there, and it may not be tangible, but it is out there. And so a lot of what I coach founders on is to leave that, to point
Mhm.
at it and know that it's happening, and then turn around and figure out what you want to do with your business. Because you win, there will be a story that says you're too aggressive. You lose, there'll be a story that says you're too weak. It doesn't matter.
It's a great
Just get it
shift.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah, just get it done the way you want to get it done, right? Because the
It's
relying on the
business.
story, just yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a mental shift, right? We have to consciously decide to not listen to the limiting beliefs, whether internal or external, and then just run like hell.
Sure. And that's a great point for women leadership and how they are doing and they are dealing with their companies and the business. And looking forward, when you think about the future of innovation, what
Hmm.
trends excite you the most about AI, about which industry? I know that you work with health tech and fintech.
Hmm.
What do you think
Yeah.
about the future?
I think the future is going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot we can do with now the convergence of where the technology is and what we want to do as far as better services in healthcare, better care delivery. We now have the ability to get much more personalized with healthcare. We now can actually get to precision health in a way that's much more unique to the individual rather than groups of individuals. We just don't have, there's two things. We're still building out the data layer, and we need the interpretation layer and the infrastructure that's actually going to house the data and deliver the insights. And that infrastructure layer is the part that we don't have enough of yet. We have a lot of different sources of data getting built. We have lots of different wearables giving us lots of data, but we don't have enough tools getting to the so what and really helping us act on the data in a way that can be productive and useful. A lot of it right now is creating anxiety, and we're waking up going, "Oh my God, my Aura ring says I didn't sleep well, but I feel great." And I love Aura, don't get me wrong, but I do think connecting that to so what's that help us move forward proactively and really manage for human performance are the things that I want to see and that I'm excited about because I want, we're living 20 to 30 years longer than we used to. The healthcare system is not built for that. we need other ways to manage for all the growing longevity of humans needs to be wrapped in continued performance, whether it's mobility, cognition, whatever it is.
Sure.
And we have the tools we have the tech to do that now. And so I'm excited to see how we make that real.
And for yourself, what impact do you hope your work will have created?
Oh, goodness. So having had some influence on the female founder side of the ecosystem is very important to me. Having hopefully being remembered as someone who built it, structured it, helped to make it more effective is something I would love to leave behind. And then I want to get behind great companies. I want to be writing checks into companies that really change how systems work, how healthcare works, how financial services work, how we get to true generational wealth, how we get to real precision based biology and care delivery. Those are the things I would love to be part of and be able to tell stories about later.
Perfect. And we are in this podcast, we already have a
Yeah.
lot of informations, tips for us and for our business. I just want to have like a rapid fire with you.
Mhm.
So, a book every founder should read.
So I just read Careless People, which is the book that's about Facebook, and it is worth the read. I mean, there's a lot of takeaways in there around hiring good people, building culture, keeping humans in mind along with revenue in mind. It also gets into the dark underbelly of what data and AI can do if you're really only thinking about it for revenue. So it's a great read.
Great. And one
Yeah.
mistake founders should avoid.
Uh,
A lot.
no, there's a lot. But I think one is not doing their homework on the investors that they're meeting, and really paying attention to who you're reaching out to and how you're reaching out to them. Because it's one thing to blast something everywhere and just hope for conversion. It's entirely another to really be thoughtful and curated about how you're reaching out. And so
Perfect.
I think doing the research always pays off. So I would make sure you
Perfect.
do your homework.
One habit that change your life and everyone should do it for better performance.
Drink lots of water, lots and lots of water. So I've gotten much better at drinking water all day long in the last 10 years. And it's made a huge difference. It just, my brain works better. I sleep better. It keeps me going all day. I'm
Simple
not
and precise.
simple. Yeah. I don't drink a lot of coffee. I'll have one cup of coffee in the morning, but if I have water all day long, I get through everything I need to do.
Perfect. And if you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be?
Oh, I want to have dinner with Michelle Obama. She's right now, she's been on my list for a long time, but I am a huge fan. I love everything she's doing and everything she has done. And I think she's such a great example of leadership, of poise, of confidence, of navigating really complicated experiences. And she's fantastic. So I need to have dinner with her at some point.
Perfect. Thank you
Yeah,
so much, Nassim. And
absolutely.
to finish our podcast, do you want to give an advice or a message for who are listeners?
Yeah, I would say if you're building, keep at it. The fundraising environment is really hard right now. It's probably harder than it's been in a long time, but it doesn't mean that what you're building isn't worth it. So get creative, find other sources of funding. There's lots of different ways to bring capital in, and don't let no's slow you down. It's going to take more conversations, but if what you're after is really important, then you got to keep at it. So don't lose the spark. You got to get it done.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey, your perspective, and your generosity with us today, Nassim.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And to everyone listening, if this conversation inspires you, share this episode with another founder, entrepreneur, or professional who is building something meaningful. Thank you for listening, and I see you in the next episode. Bye bye.